Today, we're getting under the hood of Dr. Kieva Chris-Amusan, a daughter, sister, friend, women's advocate, and the co-founder and CEO of Fertitude, a digital platform that provides women with on-demand and stigma-free access to fertility and reproductive health products and services. Despite her background as a medical doctor, growing up in a family of successful entrepreneurs inspired her to venture into business. She is renowned for her success with Zavandi, one of the leading wedding jewelry brands in Nigeria. Over the last decade, she has built her career as a digital marketing professional with over 8 years of experience across the e-commerce, fintech, gaming, and health sectors. She led the marketing division at SheLeadsAfrica, a community of approximately 1 million Black women, as VP of Growth Marketing. She also led marketing efforts at Venturing Women, a German incubator of female startup founders across the EMEA region. As a seasoned entrepreneur and two-time founder, Dr. Kieva has gone through the idea to startup process many times, and with Fertitude, she envisions a world where no woman feels isolated or ashamed in their reproductive journey and can access holistic support on demand. Wow, welcome, Kieva.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the elaborate intro. I love what you're doing at Under the Sisterhood. Well done.
Well, I couldn't be more delighted to be getting under the hood with you today. We are wrapping up our season 3, Women Making the World Healthier. If it's okay, I would love to get going.
Great, let's do it.
Awesome. So I've been asking every woman this question, which is really, when did it all begin for you in the healthcare space? What was that inflection point?
I have an interesting story because I tell people I've come full circle. I trained as a medical doctor. I decided to not go into clinical practice. But then about a year ago, I found myself at crossroads where I decided to start building Fertitude, which is a reproductive health startup for women here in Africa. And so the inflection point for me, I was turning 30, that's what it was. I was looking back on my career, a fulfilling career, a profitable career. I was doing well, but I was burnt out, I think. And I was asking myself, you know what, Kieva, if you could leave the quote and unquote hustle behind, I don't like the word hustle, but if I could leave that grind behind and do something where I would wake up every day and feel like, oh, I'm doing something that feels very aligned, what would it be? And then I looked at my life. I had an interesting story on navigating my own health with a PCOS diagnosis and fertility as well. And I decided, you know what, maybe I would start something to help other women navigating similar conditions, help them feel seen, help them feel supported. And that's the seed that birthed the idea of Fertitude and what Fertitude is today.
Thank you for that. And there's so much to unpack there because I want to go back to the earlier part. You've come full circle, which is brilliant. But when was that seed planted originally? I mean, you went to medical school. So talk about your journey into what got you into science, the interest in science and healthcare from the beginning. And then we will go on to learn more about what you're doing today.
I love that you've asked that. Because not many people ask, okay, what about why did you even want to do something this impactful? As a little girl, I was very brilliant in school. Where I come from, everyone is like, oh, you're so smart. You're always coming first in class. So it means you should be a doctor. So here in this side of the world, and in many parts of the world as well, when you're, the brilliant kid, it's like, oh, you either become an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. Those were like the famous 4 professions. And so I think I inherited this paradigm that people around me had. If I look back, I would not have read medicine in school if I knew better, or if I knew what I now know today. And so as a little girl, I realized that I really loved to teach. So I wanted to be a teacher. Because I was a brilliant kid, I was also good at explaining things to people. So I thought that meant that, okay, you're good at tutoring people, so maybe you should be a teacher. But everybody was like, no, you have to be a doctor. And so when I took on that dream of being a doctor, I was like, well, I want to be like the best doctor in the world. And so here's what I told everyone. I said, I want to find the cure to HIV/AIDS. So at this time, this was the time where there was like the I don't know if the word now is pandemic, but HIV/AIDS was like gaining a lot of attention at that time. And we're like, it's this disease where there's no cure, and there's a lot of it in Africa. So right now, looking back, I realized that what I simply wanted as a little girl, was I just wanted to do something big. I just wanted to do something impactful, something that could save a lot of lives, but I would also get, a good amount of recognition for that work, right? That's what it was. But that was the one thing that I could peg my dreams to, or my ambition to. So I was an ambitious little girl. When I got into medical school, I quickly realized that being a doctor is not how you find the cure to anything. I would have had to go into like biomedical engineering or something. So I was like, okay, maybe wrong profession, maybe not. But also, I realized quickly that doctors, we're a stressed bunch of people. We always have calls and all of that. And there are only so many patients one doctor can see. So I realized that to cause real change, I would have to be in policy if I wanted to cause change in the healthcare system. So about 3 or 4 years into medical school, I decided, and I told everybody in my life, that I would want to go into policy or become a politician even, because I want to have a seat at the table. I want to be able to influence policy that makes things more favorable for the healthcare system in Nigeria and Africa at large. And I think that at the point where I finished medical school, where certain things didn't go well for me, with trying to get like a placement for my, the next step of my medical career, it was easy for me to make the decision to continue to be an entrepreneur. I was an entrepreneur as a student. I had a thriving business. But it was easy for me to just say, you know what, how about I do not pursue medical training and go ahead and pursue my business, because I had detached from the outcome of being a medical doctor that walked the corridors of the hospital. So the plan was, go ahead and do business, enjoy it, but come back to do health, but you would be like in policy and you're able to do some good in the healthcare system. That's what I thought it was. I also had encouragement from my husband. My husband also trained as a doctor, and he had left. He wasn't doing clinical medicine. So he gave me the encouragement to say, Kieva, if that's what you want to do, I support you fully. It was hard, but I did it. Yeah.
I think that's great. And thank you for sharing your journey. And I think it's interesting how different cultures, the pressures that children can have and young girls can have when they have this brilliance, as you said, to pursue certain things. So I think it's to your point of these paradigms. So it's great. I think it takes a lot of courage, and I applaud you for saying, you know what, you went through it, you did it, but that's not where you saw yourself, and having the courage, and then also the support to take that next step. So share, so here you are in school, you're a student, you're a med student, and you have a thriving business. I mean, it's really interesting to hear that combination, because medical school is so all-consuming. Share with the audience what you were doing.
Oh my gosh, I did a lot. I did a lot as a medical student, but I'll try to. I think the one most successful business, which is still thriving till date, was that I was running a jewelry business. We do wedding jewelry, fine jewelry. So you want like a gold engagement ring with some moissanite or like real diamonds, we'll get it for you. So it's e-commerce. But it was a journey to that point. I started business because I wanted independence from my pocket money, the allowance I was getting from my dad. That's what it was. That was the seed. But I also realized now, looking back, that not everybody, I have a lot of friends who also wanted independence, but they didn't go ahead to start businesses. There was something I had seen in my life that made that not so crazy to me. And it was the fact that my parents were both entrepreneurs. Here's the fun fact. My parents always wanted us, myself and my siblings, to have white-collar jobs because they did not work white-collar jobs. And so, the thing about the grass being green on the other side, they thought that, oh, you know what? We have always been entrepreneurs and all of that. It would be nice for our kids to work an office job. They, as entrepreneurs, thought that they thought an office job was cooler. And they wanted that for us. Little did they know, but that's what it was. So as a student, I started off selling. I would make like homemade snacks. There's this thing we call coconut candy here in Nigeria. You shave the coconut and, you boil it together with some sugar and you mold them into like lumps, like little balls. That was my first business ever. Then I found this training on importation, like doing importation. So people who do like drop shipping from Alibaba and like sell on Amazon, and you open your own store. And I sold a lot of things. I sold shoes, I sold clothing items. I did like the whole thing. At some point, I also worked as a chef at a restaurant. So during the holidays, what I would do, I wasn't schooling in the same city where I grew up. So whenever people go home on holidays, rather than go back home to my parents, I would stay back in the university environment and pick up like a job. I was a good cook. I worked as a chef but I did a lot of things, to be honest. But I think the most significant one, and the most successful one, is the jewelry business, which is still running. That's the one called Zavandi. We're doing very well. One of the leading jewelry brands in Nigeria till date.
That's amazing. I just have to applaud. You are so fearlessly independent. You were fearlessly searching for independence and you got it. I can so relate to that. And so I'm sitting here, my eyes are like, wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And your parents must be so proud. It's so, to your point of the grass, it always seems greener on the other side. But, I guess they were role models in a way as entrepreneurs, and you got to witness them doing things that hopefully they're passionate about. And so that's a great journey and a great story. So, you talked about your career, things coming around full circle when you first started the conversation. Talk about, so I'd love to hear about your next business. So take us on the journey that got you to Fertitude, and then we'll get into Fertitude.
Okay. So the business I did before Fertitude wasn't even Zavandi, the jewelry business. I ran a marketing agency. Here's the story of how that happened. I'm running this successful jewelry business. And, people meet you and they're like, hey, does this mean you're passionate about jewelry? I'm like, no, I'm not passionate about jewelry. I just love to do business. It was very interesting, people thinking that, I mean, people just throw out like schools of thought. You assume that everyone who is doing something or running a certain business is passionate about the element of that business. That wasn't the case for me. And so at some point, I started to like ask myself, am I crazy that I'm doing like a jewelry business? I'm not passionate about jewelry. I'm running this business. I'm doing a good job of it. And I enjoy the thrill of building something and see it be successful and see it grow. I had attended an event. It was a women's roundtable event where one of the mentors gave a piece of advice, and she said, know your skill sets, because that's the thing that nobody can ever take away from you. I went home that day thinking, Kieva, so you run a jewelry business, but jewelry is not a skill set. So if someone asked you, what would you say your skill set is? At this point, maybe entrepreneurship wasn't the entire vibe that it is. And she did say, when she gave the piece of advice, to say, you can say you're a business owner, but then again, that's not the skill set. You have to pick something. Is it operations? Is it the marketing? Is it this? Is it that? And so I realized that, I enjoyed growth, right? I'm such a target girl. I like when you tell me, Kieva, this thing is at 0 today. I need you to help me take it to 100. I enjoyed that thrill. And so because I was so drawn to growth, I started to lean towards digital marketing. I dug deeper and realized that the reason my business was thriving was because I had learned to market online. That's why I was doing so well at e-commerce. I had trained myself. I dug under every rock, watched videos and figured things out. And something else became clearer to me. I'm like, Kieva, there's this one thing that everybody keeps asking you, come and do for me. And it's people are asking, how did you do that for your page? Maybe your social media page. How are you able to like get so many customers without having to like be so worried? That's the thing people keep asking me for. So maybe I have a thing with digital marketing. And that was, I started to charge people to consult. I started to charge people to train their teams to handle like their email marketing, managing their social media pages. And I think a few years later, I started an agency. I call it Zolt. So it's Zolt's digital agency. We're currently on a hiatus. You never know, right? So I'm at this point in my life where I realized that never say never, because of the many, loops I've gone through. So you know what? You might find me running Zolt once again, but we took a pause. I shut that down to start Fertitude. What we did as an agency was we worked with thought leaders coaches, people who had some form of knowledge, product, or personal brand to help them promote that. So we'd set up the end-to-end funnel, the pages, the emails, even the social media campaigns that they needed. And that was what I was doing up till the point where I said I got burnt out. And because I worked so close to my clients and I was working with very powerful figures, I had very demanding clients. And at some point, I'm like, you know what? I want to be able to use all this knowledge I have and this brilliance to build something of my own instead. And I wanted to just take a break from having clients. And I decided to start Fertitude.
Well, I just have to, I'm doing a lot of applauding here. But what's interesting about that for me, Kieva, personally, is that I went through the same thing. You know, doing marketing for clients, doing advertising and all of that requires a lot. It requires a lot because you're not just doing the work, and of course it's subjective, but then there's the other side of it. You're dealing with all these different personalities and trying to keep everyone happy and confident and moving forward, because everybody has their own things they're dealing with in these circumstances. So I think it's great that you recognize that. You're so young in your career. You're so accomplished, but when you think about it, very young in your career and so successful. So you leave, you're like, you're burnt out. You say, I'm going to go and create Fertitude. But you also mentioned earlier that it was based on your own personal journey. Can we get under the hood of your personal journey and then Fertitude?
Oh, yes, absolutely. This was my thought process that led to Fertitude. I had zero intention of building what Fertitude is today. But I'm a very ambitious girl. So when I have a thought, it's just natural that that thought always spirals into something bigger. I'm wanting a break from the day-to-day having to serve clients and take on their pains and worries and their revenue targets and losing sleep over campaigns that haven't gone right. And I'm like, you know what, Kieva? I think at this point as well, my partner and I were considering relocating to a new country. So we were already talking to immigration lawyers, right? And I had this sense of, Kieva, you are literally starting your life afresh. I mean, we didn't end up relocating, fun fact, but just being in that mind space, I felt like I felt an immense amount of power, because I'm like, Kieva, you have like power to say, I want to do something else. And maybe because, you know, there's this tendency sometimes when you start something, you don't want to stop. You don't want it to look like you failed or you quit. And so the fact that I was leaving my country, or I was intending to, and it was starting to feel real, I'm like, okay, you're starting over. So this might be the chance to run away from the stressful marketing life. And so I started to, you know, encourage that thought, and I would lay in bed and just dream about it. What if I wasn't waking up to all these messages? Kieva, what would you do? So that was the question. What would you do if you were starting afresh? And I started to dig deep. Like I said, there were a couple of ideas that came. Two of the strongest ones. There was this other one, I called it Calories with a K. And it was to be a food delivery business for healthy food, because I was on a eating healthy journey based on my health concerns. I found that I could order food a lot online, but I couldn't get like healthy meal plans delivered to me. That's probably a thing where you are, because the markets are a lot more advanced, but here it's not an industry that is booming yet. So it was going to be either that, because I could relate with it, or I was going to start a vlog. I was going to start a vlog just to talk about my fertility journey. I'm like, you know what? I'm moving to this new country. Maybe I don't have to work for a while. Maybe I could lean on my partner for a bit. I have Zavandi. I get a salary from Zavandi because I'm still on the, I'm managing partner. So I'm like, maybe that could just keep me going. And I just started a vlog, right? And maybe I channel all my marketing knowledge to starting this vlog to talk about like reproductive health, my fertility journey. And that thought is what, you know, snowballed into what Fertitude is today. So it was like, oh, let's start a vlog. Then I started to do keyword research, and I realized, oh my God, so many people are searching for answers. They're not getting the answers that they're looking for, at least not where I'm from. Again, I found a few vlogs, but not many of them were done by women from these parts, like from Nigeria or from Africa. And it just made me realize how much of a hush-hush, or how strong the silence culture is around reproductive health. Now I'm navigating, I got diagnosed with PCOS, trying to start a family. My partner and I were going to be, having a baby through the IVF process, mostly because of, genetic issues. So we're trying to avoid having a child who has sickle cell. So another long story there. And that's the main reason why we're going through the IVF. We could consider other sort of fertility treatments that aren't as serious or aren't as expensive, but because of the genetic testing. And so here I am deciding, okay, maybe I want to share my story. But then I also realized from doing keyword research and from speaking to people in my life, because I'm going through this process, that there is an actual gap in the market. There is actually like a business opportunity here. So I'm like, okay. Maybe. Anyway, we started an anonymous forum. That was the main goal. Start a forum, make it safer for people to speak up. Maybe if people speak up, then they will find the solution they need. Then we find out that these women also needed to speak to specialists, and it was hard for them to find specialists, right? And that's how it became like a health project. So I would love to tell you more about Fertility, but I'm just going to take a pause here, to know if I answered the question.
I think you did a great job, and thank you for sharing that. And, yeah, women's health journeys, our journeys are so individual yet universal. There's other women. And so I love the fact that wanting to go out and share your story, your PCOS journey, and share your experiences through vlogging, and the fact that Fertitude came about seeing all these unmet needs. And I think, not to put any pressure on you, Kieva, I think what happens is when you have strong, powerful women like yourselves, your job is to kind of create that, because you have the capacity to. You have the capacity to take your power and your strength and your brilliance and bring something to bear to solve. And it's interesting, you mentioned just a short while ago that, things aren't as advanced in Africa as, say, they are in the Western world. And I think that, interestingly, you are at the forefront. So I'm going to say, regardless if you are as active, that you stay and you keep Fertitude and have it exist, because 10 years from now, if you don't get acquired or go public or whatever it may be in Africa, it's going to be solving problems that you can't even have imagined. So you're here where you are today. So I'd like to sort of talk about that. So Fertitude was born out of this experience, and you started with this. What are you doing today? Because I think it is worth sharing, because it's so revolutionary in Africa.
Thank you so much. Before I answer your question, I have to pause to acknowledge the compliment that you've given me. Thank you for that encouragement. As a founder, especially as a founder building in B2C, like consumer health, it gets tough. And I will lap up every single bit of encouragement that I get, because I'm like, yes, I need that. So I'm adding that to like the list of things to look at whenever I feel discouraged. And you also mentioned about, no pressure, but as a strong woman, maybe I have a duty. I acknowledge that, in fact, that's the reason I started. I realized that I'm more outspoken than the average, well, at least than the average woman in my life. I wasn't feeling stigma about my situation, which is unusual. And I didn't realize it was unusual. So I'm like, Kieva, you know what? You've lost your shame. You have none. You might as well carry the placard for the other women behind you who may not feel that safety to use their voice. And that's literally the entire heart behind Fertitude. So to your question of what Fertitude is today, what we are is, well, I tell, depending on who is listening, when I'm speaking to investors, I tell them we're building like the Flow Health for Africa. The way that we're different for people who use like the regular period trackers is that we also have a bit of telehealth, telemedicine on our platform, meaning that women can, in addition to the fact that you'd be able to track your periods, log your symptoms, keep track of all of that, you also can speak to experts right on our platform. So you need to talk to a gynecologist, or you just need to talk to like a GP, a general practitioner, a doctor, or you need to talk to like a coach around something like your nutrition, you need some counseling, like a therapist, you can get access to that on our platform. But the way that we've combined all of these things is that we're community-led, we're community first. So within our mobile app, we have a mobile app. It's live on the app stores, on Google Play, and on the Apple Store. Fertitude is the name. A woman, first of all, what we're giving you is that safety. It's fully anonymous, and there's a community within the platform. So there are support groups for various things. You need a support group for fertility, things like PCOS. You need support. You've just gotten pregnant now. You don't know what next, right? We have a community for that. For new moms as well, and some other general health issues. And so the mindset that I have, or the thinking, the hypothesis that we have behind fertility is that when you create safe spaces for women, it's the right place to then give them the help that they need. As women, we want to vent, we want to rant, we want to talk to someone. But in that moment, our algorithm then feeds you the support that you need. So whether that's our 24/7 AI health assistant, because we know that with telehealth, there's a bit of scheduling. Sometimes you just want someone to talk to in the moment, right? So we have a health assistant, she's called Kiki, and she's that companion. We call her the 24/7 reproductive health companion. We've gotten a lot of good reviews about Kiki because women are like, Kieva, I've never had someone speak to me with as much empathy for my situation. And it's really, really
That's wonderful.
like bringing, yeah. And, I had a conversation with someone telling me, Kieva, it brings tears to my eyes to tell you that, like, I can't believe that it's a piece of technology that is then giving me the succor that I've needed. And there was a point where I was chatting with Kiki where I felt like, no, it has to be someone behind this chat. And I was like, no, trust me, it wasn't like, this is the technology that we've fine-tuned. So, and I'm going to pause for a moment, just checking with you, but I just want to highlight this because when we first built Kiki, one of our engineers is a man. We have 2 female engineers, right? And the male engineer was the one who led the charge on the AI part, the machine learning bit of the bot we're building. And I told him, we're not there yet. The way this bot currently interacts is not the way that a woman wants to be spoken to, right? And so it kind of took a little bit of working with someone who understood the problem, who had experienced it, working with females who kind of understood what we're looking for us to fully fine-tune this piece of technology. And I just wanted to highlight this because it kind of speaks to like building a solution when you have empathy for the situation. But I'll just wrap up my answer to say that what Fertitude does today is that we're the first point of call, and that's what we are trying to be. It's work in progress when a woman has questions about her health. So she can get support, but she also gets the answers, the medical answers that she needs. And then, there's a point where we would have to refer her, and we're also able to provide referrals as well.
Wow, that's wonderful and very ambitious, by the way. And you said that you've done this, it's been the past year. I mean, so to build that Fertitude out, to have it come, I mean, you said you're like thinking and building a million miles a minute, which is fantastic, because customers need it. And I love, when I hear about Kiki, this bot that really speaks the language of what women are going through, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about empathy. What is my journey like? How can you speak to me in a way that connects and resonates with what I'm feeling and going through? Because we're not just going through a symptom or a problem. There's the psychosocial dynamic that intersects with that. So I think that having and training your bot to be able to speak to that and be someone that they feel really connected to is really, it's powerful. And I think it's going to be beyond the future, because the more she's trained, Kiki's trained, the better it will be. So congratulations on that. That's like incredible. I'm curious because like Fertitude, I mean, because you are such a serial entrepreneur, I mean, and you had mentioned doing that calorie company. Is that something, do you feel like Fertitude's going to be your focus for the next 5 years? Like, what are you imagining your, next few years like, and what you want to do from a vision perspective?
Yeah, I'm all in, 10 toes, 10 fingers. When I started Fertitude, I had some of my old clients. When you run an agency, you have returning clients. And I sent out a memo saying that we weren't taking clients and whatnot. I've had people reach out back wanting to work together. I mean, I succumbed once and I've had to say a lot of no's because I put my foot down. I want to give this my entire attention. You know, my mindset at first was, Kiva, give it a year, see how this goes, and decide if this is what you really want to do. You know, I was in that moment of coming into my power to say, I get to decide what I want to do. So if this is not it, I still get the power to say, okay, no, right? I was wrong. And I told myself I'll give myself a year. It's been a year and about 6 or 7 months. And I can tell you that this Fertitude is what I'm going to be doing for the foreseeable future. Based off of all the knowledge I have, I also know that life sometimes works in ways that we do not expect. So yes, I'm keeping an open mind, but in terms of like my intentions and my plans, it's Fertitude. So I still see myself fully invested in Fertitude for the very foreseeable future, all things being equal. We haven't even scratched the surface. There's a lot of work to be done. And it's work that I'm enjoying. It's work that I'm enjoying. It's work that I'm enjoying so much. There is so much opportunity. We've seen potential for so many spin-offs. The entrepreneur in me is excited because beyond what Fertitude is today, if I decided that there were other opportunities still around women's health that I wanted to solve for, I see opportunities to do like so many spin-offs. If Fertitude doesn't work out, which I hope to God that it will, and it's looking good, but if it did not, there are also other areas still with women's health that we could pivot into. So I'm excited about it. Fun fact is that with my personal brand, when I first started Fertitude, if you look back on my digital footprint, I had a very active personal brand just around my marketing persona. So I had like a YouTube channel and all of that stuff. And I was actively talking about funnels and coaching and all of that stuff. And so when I started Fertitude, I took a pause from all of that because I was like, I don't want to go right in talking about health and all of that because it's like, I'm not like, how many personalities do I have? Like, am I confusing people? So I was like, you know what? I want to be very sure that this is how I want to spend like the next phase of my life before I do that. And I'm currently in that phase where I'm now coming into my advocacy era. And you'll see me a lot more just being a voice for women. I've always been a voice for women, interestingly. So my first business, I had an all-female team. It wasn't on purpose. It just happened that way. When I was running an agency, all of my clients, all but one of my clients were female. And so I've always had like female gravitate towards me. I'm the firstborn of 4 children. And so I've kind of always been like a big sis. I've had that big sis personality. And so I realized that I've always been an advocate, but it was more for female entrepreneurship, female empowerment. And so one of the things I'm now coming into is how to connect that to health. When women are healthy, it means that we can do a lot more in society. And that's just the side of me that I'm now connecting more with.
Oh, I just love that. I love I love the nature of how you described how you were an advocate as a big sis in your family, as an entrepreneur, to all the women and all the businesses you've had. And now as I think about Fertitude, you're right. Instead of spin-offs, I mean, that can be your core and you can just continue to add to it. But I think it's just brilliant. I also think what's interesting to me, Kiva, is the fact that your own personal journey. I was having a conversation with a femtech expert, and this was 2 years ago when we started our podcast. And she said to me, there are 2 different types of founders. There's one type of founder that is based on a personal journey, an experience, whether it's health or whatever it is that their business does. And they build their business around their own personal journey. And then the other type of founder has this idea, sees this unmet need from a business perspective, and then they just pursue it. And I think that I don't think there's one better way than the other, but I think when you're on your own personal journey, because mine's a personal journey, I think that there's so much power in that because you are a living, breathing focus group, if you will. You are a testable proposition. You're experiencing it. So you know what you need. And so, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think you covered that, but I think it's really interesting. Fertitude solves for what for you?
Fertitude solves first for me, it's the emotional support. sometimes, many times, many times, we can't even talk to our best friends about the intricacies of what we're dealing with. Not necessarily because we're trying to keep it secret or we don't feel comfortable enough. It's just hard to explain it. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I'll take IVF, for example, and I haven't started our IVF cycles yet. I know from stories that it can be a tough journey for most women. But I'll use that as an example because for anyone who maybe has gone through that process or has heard about it, this is a very relatable example. How does a woman who has had to go through IVF fully explain the pressure, the mental pressure, and the anxiety of that process to a well-meaning friend? You're thinking about all the many things that could go wrong. Maybe someone got overstimulated because that happens sometimes with women, or just the process of trying to get a leave off of work. The money, the financial, it's taking a lot. I mean, here, I don't know about you, but over here in Nigeria, most insurance plans don't cover for IVF. So it's out of pocket.
Here. It's interesting. They're just starting to here, but yes. And then there's insurance plans for that, but yeah.
Another business opportunity, by the way, that nobody has scared to dig deep, because I want to digress a little bit. The whole point of insurance is that you don't want people spending money. So insurance, people, when you're trying to build an insurance business, you're not going after people who are sick, right? Or people who need the payment. But nobody has actually taken time to maybe dig deeper to say people need this. So what kind of financial innovation can happen around this, right? But I digress, right? Ultimately, I realized this. My best friend was going through a tough pregnancy. She had something called hyperemesis gravidarum. So she's throwing up literally every hour. And for 9 months. That's crazy, right? Let's not go into the fact that it's also wild that women go through things that nobody has bothered to pay attention to and find the answers to, right? And we're going through so much pain for something as natural as birthing the next generation. But hey, I'm glad that that's changing now. And so I realized that my friend, before we became friends, she had had a difficult pregnancy before the one I witnessed. And maybe I would have judged her a little bit if she may have come across as fussy to me. If I didn't get a first row seat to what she was going through. And guess what? I'm a woman. Guess what? I'm a doctor. And so when I got a first row seat to what she was going through, I realized that sometimes even friendship does not give enough empathy. If that friend hasn't walked those shoes, and so that was literally like I said, the first version of our product was the anonymous forum. I was like, I just want to solve for the psychosocial support element of things. And so I think that first and foremost, that's what Fertitude solves for me: feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling supported. The other thing that Fertitude solves isn't necessarily for me, because as a doctor, I have the answers that I need. I have doctor friends, and I even, for areas that I do not specialize in, or I did not specialize in, I have enough understanding of those issues. But I also found that many women did not know the right people to speak to first. And we solve for that. If you are already in a community where you're having a lot of fun and you're having conversation, it helps that you know that when you need to speak to an expert, you can get the answer that you need right there. It helps that you know that even within the community, there isn't misinformation being spread, because that's something that our community also solves for. You go on forums, you go online, and you see a lot of schools of thought that are very inaccurate and dangerous. And so we solve for that as well. I would wrap this answer up by saying that when you speak about, the perspective, I do think that I bring a hybrid perspective to the table. It's not just the personal experience. I also bring a lot of my business background to this, which is one of the reasons I think that taking a pause because there's an airplane flying over, and I don't know if you can hear it. I live very close to the airport. Okay, so that wasn't necessary. Okay. I think that I bring a hybrid perspective to the table. From a personal experience, yes, but also with my very rich, if I do say so myself, business background. Um, and you know what, Elizabeth, I think this is one of the reasons why I've been able to do so much with Fertitude in such a little time. I've spoken to many people who are trying to do good, and they think, and it's not an inferior perspective, but many people think that the only way we can solve for issues around women's health is by just doing NGOs and just having communities. But I'm like, you know what? We can build a business out of this. We can make this profitable, and it's not like profitable in the sense that capitalism, were feeding off of people's pain. No, we can do good work and we can also make a business out of it. And I'm glad that we're proving that. Our numbers are looking good, and that makes me happy. And you know what? Whenever this episode is out, I'm sure that there will be very good stuff in the media just about Fertitude and the traction that we're making. So yes, I think that I bring a hybrid perspective to the table, personal experience, but also, from the business point of view.
Wow. Well, I think that's fantastic. And I think you're right. And I do want to say something, Kiva, if I may. I want to make an acknowledgement that we as women shouldn't feel bad because we're bringing a business to market that solves an unmet need and a problem. We should not be apologetic because we're going to make money off of it. Women should not only take pride in making money for their ingenuity and ideas and for their hard work to bring something to market. They should stand tall and strong and know that it's the right thing because you're role modeling that for the next generation. That women are in their power in those moments. So only applause for what you're doing. No apologies for that. I have one question, but I have one thing in between because I want to give you just a little more space. Is there anything else you want to share before I ask my last question? And I could be talking to you forever. You are really fascinating. So is there anything else you want to share about your life, your story around health, and what you're doing with Fertitude?
All right. I lost you for a minute.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about your health, that the healthcare, the work you're doing with Fertitude, your vision, before I ask the last question?
Anything else I'd like to share, perhaps about my health? There's a lot, but I'll try to pick one. I'll say, dear woman, it's not your fault that you're having to go through what you're going through. We live in a world where we live our lives by templates. What I mean by this is, for many of the situations that we have to deal with, there is knowledge being handed down to say, here is how to navigate. But it's not so much the case for women's health, a lot of women's health concerns, partly because we don't even know, right? And the other part, possibly because women, sometimes if more women were at the forefront of innovation and at the forefront of business, then maybe we would come up with the solutions that we need for ourselves. And so because we're just coming into that era where more women are working, more women are, innovating, I think we'll see things change with the generations to come. So I'm excited about that. And so the one thing I would say is, don't beat yourself up too much. I'm sending you hugs. I hope that you find the strength, the community that you need to navigate your situation, but don't beat yourself up too much about it, because as women, we tend to take on the blame, to say, oh, maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have eaten this, maybe I could have done that different. No, okay. You know what? If you have whatever wisdom your situation requires, for example, you need to change your diet, do what you can, but be kind to yourself, extend yourself a lot of grace. Because even something as basic as I need to change my diet, right? One of the struggles I had was, I'm very aware as a doctor and also as a patient to whom my doctor told me, oh, change your diet, maybe that would help. Nobody gave me a template to say, here is what and what you should do. Right? I had to do my own research to find the answers that I needed for my health. And I'm glad that I did, thanks to other women who are then taking their templates and shared that template with the world. Because that's the world we live in. We live by the template that someone else has handed down. So be kind to yourself if you haven't found a template yet. I hope this episode becomes some kind of template. And I just have to tell you, be kind to yourself, extend yourself a lot of grace. But at the same time, apply the wisdom that you find, but still be kind to yourself.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for that. This question kind of merges both thoughts, but this is your platform today to share a message with women of all ages, of all backgrounds, and of all cultures. What do you want to leave them with, Kieva?
I'm taking a pause to gather my thoughts. What I want to leave them with, I have the words right on the tip of my tongue. I just want to say it in the best way possible. Be kind to other women. I realized my privilege. I was telling you about my friend and how that I realized that with her first pregnancy, I may have been judgmental if I had heard some of the quote unquote excuses that she had to give for her situation. As an entrepreneur and someone who was a coach, there were times where I did not cut a few women some slack because they weren't showing up to work as much as they should have. But I did not realize the extent to which the struggles they had on the home front, maybe with being a mom, for instance, and not having as much support from their partners, right? I did not realize how much of a toll that took. And I started to unpack this when I started doing a lot of research for Fertitude. I realized that, Kieva, you come from a lot of privilege. I grew up in a situation where my mom had help. So we had a housekeeper, right? And so I always thought that every woman should know how to delegate because I delegate. That's one of my strengths. My husband laughs at me and says, Kieva, you're creatively lazy. I feel like I'm digressing a bit, but what I'm trying to say is many times when we do not have certain struggles, we lose empathy for other people that have those struggles. So I would say be kind to other women and also realize that a lot of the paradigms that we have, we do not even realize how much of, patriarchal, not the toxic ones now, the toxic patriarchal mindsets we've imbibed as to how to treat a woman and how to support a woman. And so I would encourage anyone listening to this to say, question everything you know to be true and ask yourself, why? Is this really true? Is this really the way this has to be? Or is there a better way? That's where I am currently. I'm unpacking a lot of things. And I think that's what I would encourage every friend in my life, every sister, every woman, and every man as actually to do. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Be kind to other women, lift other women. And I love that, ask the why, ask the why. And I think that's brilliant. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for getting under the hood and for sharing your story, Kieva.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I had fun just getting these things off my chest. And you took me to places that I hadn't been in a while, when you were asking me to just go back to the beginning. So thank you. This was a good session, a little bit like therapy.
Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood LLC and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Matt Butler, and edited by Matt Butler. The music is by Ayla Schaefer. Her song, Rose.